Hey, and welcome to a special video here on the channel, and I call it a special video because the subject of today's video is definitely a unusual and special phone. What we have here today is an unknown, unreleased Nokia prototype device. And I cannot figure out exactly what this thing is, and neither can anyone else who I asked. There's a bunch of theories on as to what this phone could be, ranging from a Asha device that was supposed to be released in the US but cancelled, to a completely unreleased series of devices, a phone that was supposed to be a part of a larger series of devices that was entirely cancelled, to it being some sort of Nokia testbed as well. So there's a bunch of theories as to what this thing could be, but here in this video we'll be exploring all those theories and taking a closer look as to see what this thing exactly is. This is the unknown Nokia prototype here in 2022. So as usual, before jumping right into this video, don't forget to smash that like button down below as it helps this video get on YouTube's algorithm, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and ring that bell notification button so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Also, if you have any questions regarding this device or any comments regarding this device, don't forget to leave a question or a comment down below and we can start a discussion, or I can answer your questions. My social media is also linked down in the description below, which includes Instagram, Discord, and Twitter. And now let us actually jump right into this video and see what exactly this strange phone really is. Now for a bit of history on the device, and by the way, like I said, I don't know anything much about this thing, so all the history that I have for you as of now is just the history of this particular device and how it came to be. Now, I found this thing on eBay for about $267 total, which is a complete steal considering how rare this phone is. It was a really good price, because for my N8 prototype, the one over there, the Nokia Columbus prototype, I paid about $220. So this thing being $267 is definitely well within the range of what I was just going to pay for something like this, and it was well worth the price. This thing, when I saw it, of course, it immediately struck me as something that looks a lot like the Nokia 600 prototype, which was never released. Here's a picture of the Nokia 600. This phone was never released. However, as you can see, the camera layout is different on the 600 and this thing. It could also have been a alternative design to the Nokia 700, which was released, but then again, the 700 runs Nokia Symbian Bell. This thing either runs Series 40 or a version of Nokia OS. It's a bit hard to tell because the OS, as you'll see in a bit, is very incomplete. This phone as a whole is entirely unfinished.
God left me unfinished!
And it is also full of bugs and non-functional icons and basically settings. So this is definitely a prototype by every sense of the word. It was not something that was even close to being ready for the public market. Regardless, it seems to have been designed really well and thought out really well, because as you can see, this thing looks really unique, really sleek, and something that would have really been an eye-catcher. Look at this thing. This looks like the blue Nokia N8, which was released in Europe. I don't think the blue N8 was ever released in the US, because it has a similar color profile. As you can see there, it is very similar to the blue Nokia N8, and the back of this thing is definitely an eye-catcher. It's very sleek. It's got that iPhone 3GS sort of curve. It's not too aggressive, but as you can see, it is curved to fit your hand, and we'll talk about the design of this thing as time goes by and throughout this video. Now, the first theory, and this is one of my theories, and what I think this thing probably is an unreleased Asha device for the United States market. A phone probably that would have been called the Asha 400, because there's no phone called the Asha 400. It went from Asha 311 to the Asha 500 series, the 501, 502 and stuff like that, which were entirely different phones. This could probably well be the Nokia Asha 400, a phone that was supposed to be released for the US market. But then again, this is still a theory. I just came came up with this a few hours ago, because it looks a lot like an Asha phone. Like I said, it does not have Symbian Bell. It doesn't run a smartphone OS. Instead, it either runs Series 40 or Nokia OS, a much more cheaper, budget-friendly version as opposed to Symbian. It doesn't have a home button either, so Symbian phones always have home buttons because they're smartphones, they're multitasking. This thing does not have the ability to multitask. So it's definitely either Series 40 or Nokia OS as a whole. The OS on this thing is pretty weird, as I'll talk about it in a bit. All these icons and stuff you see, they're not real actually, and I'll talk about that in a bit. It's an interesting thing on its own. So it is my theory that this could have actually been an Asha device for the US market, probably called the Asha 400, and it was supposed to be in the budget mid-range, I'd say, because this phone, despite not having multitasking and all that stuff, still looks like something they definitely wanted to be an eye-catcher and something that had a premium design. Because look at this thing, it has this fake grill-like effect at the top and bottom. It's got a raised display, pretty unique design, very akin to the Nokia 700 and the cancelled Nokia 600. This thing actually looks better than the 700 and the 600 because the front of the 700 and 600 were pretty boring looking if you look them up. This thing actually has a very nice looking front. This is one of the more attractive Nokia prototypes that I've ever seen. So that is my first theory. The second theory that I'd like to bring forward to you is a theory proposed by someone I was talking to on Instagram, a person who also owns Nokia Prototype devices, and he suggested that this thing could very well be a Nokia Meltemi phone. So Nokia Meltemi was a cancelled series or lineup of devices, also semi-budget sort of, and they were not supposed to be entirely smartphones, more like feature phones like this thing. They're not exactly dumb phones, but they're not smartphones either. They're in the middle, they're feature phones. So this very well could have been a Nokia Meltemi device, but it's not running the supposed Meltemi OS. This is definitely either Series 40 or Nokia OS, and like I said, this is pretty unfinished, so it's a bit hard to tell because they look identical. It's most likely Series 40. So it could have been a future Meltemi OS device. It just wasn't loaded with Meltemi OS. So that is another theory that I want to put forward. The only issue with that theory is all the other Meltemi OS leaked phones look different. They look more rounded and they look more fun or savvy sort of. Now, stemming from the first theory we discussed a while back, that this thing was an Asha 400 most likely, it is also most likely based off an Asha device. However, the guy I was talking to, like I mentioned earlier, he suggested that it may have also been an Asha based device. However, it would have had a different name if released in the US, and that made a lot of sense to me because most based upon devices, when they are released in the US, their names are considerably changed to something entirely different. So as I suggested, this very well could have been a Asha based device for the US, but like he suggested, it could have also been based on an Asha device but released under a different name. So we really don't know what this thing is called at the end of the day. And the fun fact is, since naming this thing is open to everyone and its weird RM number, RM715, has never been seen before, and I'm the only one who owns one of these as far as I can tell. No one else has owned one of these. No photos of an identical phone exist on the internet. I guess we should give it a name. And we are now going to go ahead and type in, oh, sometimes it does that, *#0000#. And I've covered up this area because I don't really know what that number means, so I'll just cover it up. So as you can see, it says Nokia 6700 Classic. I was suggested that this thing could have actually the base specs of a 6700, and we'll talk about that in a bit. There's just so much to cover on this phone. This video is easily going to be about 40 minutes long. 2010, there's the date, like I said, and RM715 variant 00, no virtual variant, as you can see there. So this thing doesn't have a name. So I thought, you know what, we may want to give this thing a name. So I was searching for the prototype name or pre-production project name for the Asha 311 because the Asha 311 is actually one of the closest phones to this that it possibly could be. Now every phone has its own production, pre-production or prototype name. For example, the Nokia Mural over here is known as, let me cover some information here, it's known as Nokia Project Spider. As you can see there, this thing is also a prototype device that I'll cover in a future video. The Nokia N8 prototype over here, you've already seen this phone in this video. If you haven't already seen it, you can go ahead and watch that video. This Nokia N8 prototype is known as Columbus. The Nokia N8 project was called Nokia Project Columbus. This, and you've probably seen this as well, I'll put it up here in this video, that's the full review video to that. This is the Nokia Vela prototype. So this thing was called Vela when it was in design stage and stuff. These are all unreleased prototypes. Well, this one was released. These two, well, that was released as the N8 in a different form factor, sort of with different features and stuff. This thing was cancelled entirely. So that is the Nokia Vela prototype. So I was looking for what this thing could have been called based on what the Asha 311 was called, and currently as I am making this video, the person that I was talking to, he said he'll ask around and see if anyone knows what the Asha 311 was called while it was in designing or pre-production, basically its prototype name. But it's still highly unlikely that we'll ever get that name, but if we do, we'll base this phone's name off that, because what I think is this is a possible Asha 400. The Asha 311's name could be used to make an identical name up for this thing. But if you do have an alternative idea to what this thing is or what it could be called, don't forget to leave a comment down below. Definitely leave your suggestions, and maybe in a future video we will actually give this thing a proper name. So definitely stay tuned for that future video. But as of now, this will be just known as the Unknown Nokia Prototype or RM715. So, unusual markings. Now you have been staring at this phone for well over 5 minutes now, and you may have noticed it says C0 at the top. So why was I rambling all the time? Why isn't it just a C series? That's not always the case. I've seen other prototype devices with fake markings like that. They just give them a random marking like C or N or something like that, but it may end up being something completely different from a completely different series. Now the N8 prototype, of course, it's called N00, even though it was just called N8. But they added another 0 there for another numeric, but I don't know why they did that. Here, despite it being called C0 up front and C000 at the back, I doubt it that this thing was supposed to be a C series phone. This does not look like something from the C series. And here's proof. Here's an N9 prototype, an N series prototype with C0 marking at the top as well. And this phone, I also purchased it from the same seller that I bought this from, and as we speak it is still on its way from eBay, and I'll be definitely reviewing that phone as well, as it has a few differences from the final N9 model. I still have to fix it first though, because it's broken. So we'll fix it and then we'll review it in another video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But as you can see in this photo, it says C0. So that's one suggestion as to why, though this has C0 marking on it, it's probably not going to be a C series, or probably wouldn't have become a C series, because the N series phone over there, the N9, was called the N9 and not the C9. So there you go. Furthermore, as you saw earlier, it said 6700 Classic. This thing may have the internals of a 6700 Classic. This phone right here. It may share some of the base internal specs. That's why in that information section it identifies as a 6700 Classic. So it looks like an Asha. It has C markings all over it. It identifies as a 6700 Classic. And it also shares design characteristics with the 600 and the 700 as well. Yeah. This thing is really weird. It has been confusing me for the last 48 hours really badly, and everyone else who I spoke to as well. No one can really figure out what this thing is. It is weird beyond all imagination. So yeah, those were the weird markings on this phone, and adding further more fuel to the fire as to what on earth this thing is. Now let us discuss actually one of the most interesting things about this phone, and that is its design and build quality. So let's bring this thing a little closer, lock the screen. And as you can see, the front of this phone is very unique. It's a form of raised-ish glass. As you can see, the glass portion is raised, and this is a capacitive touchscreen, so it's not a soft plastic resistive touchscreen, and it looks very unique. Of course, it looks like the 700, but then again, not that much either. Up top here we have the weird fake grill-like thing. This is not the speakers, by the way. The speakers are at the bottom there. We have a earpiece over here. We have a sensor over there. That is a sensor, that is not a camera. Nokia branding, C0 branding, the display, we'll talk about that in a bit. We have the buttons over here. So we have our accept call button and decline call button, no home button, another grill down here, and somewhere in one of these holes is the microphone. The microphone is of course hidden. And we can now move on to the side of the device. As you can see on this side, we have the lock button over here, and we have the volume rockers as well. Moving on to the top of the device, we have the smaller barrel charger over there, so the slimmer style barrel charger. We also have a micro USB charger, and by the way, this thing can also charge via micro USB. This is the micro USB port, and we have a 3.5mm headphone jack there as well. Moving on to this side, we have a flap-like thing that hides actually something really weird, which we'll talk about later. It has this battery symbol there, but there's nothing really there. It looks like a half-done port-like thing, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And also, there is your micro SD expansion slot over there and nothing else. And we can also look at the bottom. As you can see, it has the lanyard strap-like thing to put around your wrist or around your neck for a lanyard. And moving on to the back, which is easily the most gorgeous part of this phone, we have Nokia C000 branding over there, two rear firing stereo speakers, the polished aluminum back, like I said earlier, kind of looks like the same color on the Nokia N8, really nice. We have the two speakers, and then we have a single LED flash with the magnifier plus the 5-megapixel camera, as you can see there. This part is aluminum, these two parts are plastic, and as you can see, they're more glossy, and this part is more matte. The back is also curved, as you can see, but the curve is not very aggressive like, for example, the iPhone 3GS. However, it's still a nice curve. In terms of build quality, this thing isn't a tank. It's not built really well or anything like that. This was not supposed to be a high-end smartphone by the looks of things, because of course it doesn't have smartphone functions. This is more of a feature phone. However, it is still built really nice. This raised glass design is definitely a premium look to it, and this would have been probably an upper mid-range. Well, I'd say, I don't know, could have been upper mid-range, or the upper mid-range of the lower mid-range, if that makes any sense. Kind of a weird way to put it. Regardless, it's got a metal back and all that stuff, so it is still well built, and it does not creak or squeak or anything like that. It's a very unique design, and it's built nice. It really feels nice in the hand. This curved design really helps a lot. So yeah, an overall very well built phone for what it is. So now let us discuss the display on this thing, and I of course had to measure this display by myself, and it came out to be exactly 3 inches, which makes it more akin to the Asha 311, like that one over there. By the way, I have done a full review on this thing, a retro style review. If you already haven't checked it out, it's up on my channel, the Asha 311, and that's where it becomes more akin to the Asha 311 rather than the 600, 700 or 500. So here's a quick comparison on gsmarena.com against the 600 versus the Asha 311. As you can see, the displays on the 600, it's also TFT technology. The 700 had an AMOLED, the 600 and the 500 were the ones with TFT LCDs. It's got a 3.2-inch display with this resolution, 360 by 640, 16 by 9 aspect ratio, 229 pixels per inch. But since this thing's display is the same size as the Asha 311s, it's most likely also going to have the same resolution just like the Asha 311. So 240 by 400 pixel, 5 by 3 aspect ratio, 155 pixels per inch. Now initially, if you watched that previous retro style review video on the Asha 311, I disagreed with it having 65,000 colors, because it looked like it had a bit more colors, maybe close to 256,000 colors. But let's assume that it does have 65,000 colors and I was wrong in that video. There's no way that this thing has 65,000 colors. This is definitely a 256,000 color display. And by the way, I mentioned that these icons are fake. We'll get to that in the software section, so I cannot really say based off these icons themselves because they're bad color. But looking at this and looking at some of the stock photos in this thing, you can see that this is definitely not 65,000 colors. This is at least 256,000 colors with some certainty. I can say that it is not 65,000 colors. 65,000 colors looks much more worse than this. This is not 16 million colors, not the full color complement. However, it's that good sweet spot which is 256,000 colors. The display is also relatively bright. I don't think this is max brightness because there's no brightness setting. They have not included the brightness setting. It looks a bit like max, but it could be upper medium. It does perform decently in bright conditions, but I cannot confirm that what it would be like on max brightness because there's no way to set it to max brightness. Apart from that, it performs decently in outdoor bright conditions. The colors are relatively accurate to 256,000 colors, and it's more than usable for what I think it is for a phone from 2010, probably a semi-budget phone or a feature phone, if you may. So, as mentioned earlier, the weirdness of this phone has not even gone to its fullest. Because here's something else. In terms of technical specifications, if you remember or you're not paying that much attention, it identifies under the info section as a 6700 Classic. Now, why is that? When a phone gives you the information of another phone or identifies as another phone with the star hash double zero hash command, it actually means that that phone has the specifications of said phone in that information section. So this thing actually may have the specs of a 6700 Classic from 2009, which makes it even more weird because we went from an Asha 311 to 2012, the Nokia 700, the 500, the 600, and now you're going to 2009 backwards with the 6700 Classic, which is this phone over here. As you can see, it's a triple click button phone. So how is this possible? It's just they probably use the base specs for ease of use. Now, if we're going off that information, assuming it's true, this thing has a processor that is a single-core 465 MHz Texas Instruments built processor. It's most likely Texas Instruments based on Nokia's history with getting a lot of processors manufactured by them. So single-core ARM11 465 MHz. In terms of RAM, this thing probably on paper should have 64 megs of RAM because the 6700 Classic probably has around 64 megs of RAM. I couldn't confirm, but it's most likely that. But then again, this having a touchscreen and all that stuff, it's most likely a bit bumped up to 128 megs, somewhat like on the Asha 311. It has an internal storage apparently of 170 megs on the 6700 Classic. It's actually 256, but usable is 170. Of course, the rest has gone for the operating system, but in total it's 256 megs of RAM. And this thing, if you look upon device, where is that memory status over there, as you can see, free memory 144, gallery 18.7, 1.2, applications 5.7. If you add that all up, it's close to 170 indeed. So it's actually probably 256, but usable, it's 170 megs of RAM, megs of internal storage, just like the 6700 Classic. Sorry if I mix up names and stuff. We're going all over the place with so many different models. So yeah, that is what it is. It has a micro SD expansion slot as well, up to 16 gigs on the 6700 Classic. So this thing is also most likely up to 16 gigs as well. The phone book is 2000 entries with photo call, 20 dialed, 20 received, and 20 missed calls as well. I don't know if that will carry over to this, but it probably could be a bit more on a feature phone like this. The 6700 Classic was also somewhat of a feature phone and not an entire smartphone. However, just because it says in that section that it's a 6700 Classic does not mean that it's entirely a 6700 Classic. The processor and the RAM may be the same, but not everything else as well. Now let us discuss that weird thing on the side, that extra port that I mentioned. I don't know what that is, honestly. I've been thinking, and it's got this battery logo on it, as you can see. But the two chargers up top, the charging port, you get the micro USB charging port, which it charges from perfectly, and the barrel charger. What's this? Why is there a battery logo there? Honestly, I'm lost. I don't know, and I would like for you to tell me in the comment section if you know what that even means. There's a picture of a battery, and there's a closer look at what is an empty hole of a port. Let me get that to focus. Actually, let me get the torch in there so you guys can see better. There you go. You can tell me what that is, because there's nothing in there. There are no contacts or anything like that. So yeah, that is left for debate down in the comment section as to what that is. But yeah, as a whole, that is the technical specifications, assumed proposed technical specifications of this phone based on the 6700 Classic and the Asha 311. Now coming to the OS, and oh, don't think the weirdness is long gone. No, it gets much worse here. Now, if you look at it, you'll see that it looks sort of like a hybrid of Bell OS and Asha Series 40. It just looks all over the place, and everyone I asked was equally confused as to what this OS is. But is that actually the OS? Because if you go here, the icons look different. So what is all this? Let's click one and see. Oh? Why isn't it working? Maybe it's just slow. Let's click that. Nope, not working. Jamie Oliver, a lot of people are laughing at that app. That's not an app actually. None of these are apps. This is the wallpaper. Yeah, it's the wallpaper. Look at the overlay. Let me go back there. This is this bunch of squares over here. That's the actual home button. Or the go to menu button, sorry. The only functional things on this screen is the battery percentage, the signal meter, these 4 dots to go to different home screens, and these 6 dots, yeah, those 6 or 9 dots, sorry, 9 dots. Those 9 dots that basically take you to the home screen. All of this is fake. This is not real. Nothing is real on the home screen apart from what I just mentioned. Everything is a wallpaper, as you can see. Even in the background, if we go into the 4 dots there and press that thing in the background, that's a screenshot. So what is this weird thing that's going on? The general consensus is, after discussing this with many people, is that, and basically what I thought from the beginning is, and everyone else confirmed, is that all of this is just a simulation as to what this phone would have become. This would have become the final OS on this phone, this layout here, and this is sort of a simulation that actually shows what this would have become. And you can't change this either. If you go into settings and try and change the wallpaper, let's say open gallery, graphics, let's go to graphics, wallpapers. If you go to wallpapers, you'll see that the screenshots actually, not screenshots, I'm not really sure what they're. There they are, the 4 home screens. There's the first one, second one, third one, and fourth one. There you go. And you can't, let's say I want to put the tiger. I want to put that as my wallpaper. That makes no difference. You can't change it. As you see, it hasn't been changed on any home screen. It's stuck. And even the background drop there, that's also stuck. So yeah, this is sort of built into the OS. It is not just a wallpaper, it's somewhat built into the OS. This thing is most likely Series 40. As you can see, this looks definitely like Series 40. Again, I couldn't get any proper information. Even the *# command doesn't give you too much information. But this is most likely Series 40 from what I can tell you. And most of the settings don't really work. And some of them are missing, like I said. No brightness settings, nothing. Most of this stuff doesn't work. Luckily, this thing had because this thing had a very horrible vibrate. The vibration was very uncomfortable. The taptic feedback was very uncomfortable, very unpleasant. Luckily, that setting worked and I could turn it off. So it's no longer vibrating as for taptic feedback. However, most of these functions don't really work that properly. If you go into music, most of the time, I can't play any music. There are some songs here. Most of the time it does crash, and I don't know who loaded those songs on here. Applications, as you can see, none of those applications on the home screen are real. They don't transfer over to here. These things, some of them do work. For example, let's load up stopwatch, lap timing, and okay, now it's missing. Sometimes it shows you the starter, but it doesn't now. It's very random. Let's try a different app. Let us actually go to extras. We'll see games, and we'll do some games as well. I haven't tried the games as of yet, but they may or may not work, so I'm not really sure. We have collection under there as well. We have a bunch of other stuff, converter, etc., etc. We have Facebook, My Nokia, and other stuff like that. The OV store, general basic stuff. Converter, we have some options and stuff like that, but then let's do open, and it does run somewhat well. So you have a few options there. Celsius, you can put stuff in like that, but then as you see, the keyboard does not come up, so there's no way to type these in. So yeah, a lot of apps don't work, and you can't really close them properly either. You have to go back. Yes, so not all apps do work properly. They are malfunctioning and not really properly set up. You have this weird setup over here to change icon looks and stuff, but it doesn't work. That this works. You can change the grid view to list and stuff. So let's do that. Change it to list. There you go. This is how it came initially, but then I switched it back. So that's one thing that does work, which is weird. And I don't dare even try use the internet on this thing. And by the way, this thing has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And here we are, connectivity, and there you go, WLAN and Bluetooth packet data, blah, 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 blah. So this thing has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And that's also good to know, and we'll discuss extra features a bit later as well. But yeah, this is the general OS layout and stuff like that. Most of it does work okay, but most of the main functions don't really work, and some apps will run weirdly and all that stuff. I've been asked, have I tried to load apps onto this thing? I'm not gonna try anything with this thing software. We'll just leave it at that. And furthermore, the app signature issue is there, and considering this thing's a prototype, that's gonna be even worse because we don't know how this thing is set up. Let alone on a normal, fully functioning phone, the app signature issue is annoying. Now, throw a prototype that's very unstable and very untested. Yeah, no, I'm not even gonna bother. But yeah, that's the general OS. The home screen's fake, it's a simulation. Sometimes the swipe doesn't really work. You actually have to use that. But yeah, the swipe sometimes works. Let me try that again. Unlock. Yeah, it doesn't always work. And all of these are just a simulation because it's just an overlay. Now, as you can see, I have the Wi-Fi set up there, and it's getting a decent signal for what it is. The only issue is when you try to go to a web address, it usually doesn't work. Bookmarks doesn't load there. Sometimes it gets stuck on bookmarks. Oh, yep, it got stuck there. So that's annoying. And then we can go to internet again. Home, it says invalid web address. If you want to type a web address, let us do go to address. So let's type Apple, and as you can see, the keyboard is not a QWERTY keyboard. It may have a QWERTY keyboard, but it's not coming up properly. So that's that. You can't really go to that address because there's no go. None of these are the go buttons, which is also annoying. As you can see, there's no way to go to that address. It's probably supposed to be a go button somewhere, but it just doesn't have, it just hasn't come up. So yeah, that's it for browsing. There's no way to actually go to a website because none of these actually work. You can't really go to an address with this, but it's nice to see that the Wi-Fi works regardless. Okay, so let's demo some games. So we have the OV store over there to download more games. We have Bounce, it's called Bounce Tales. I think it's a version of Bounce. We have Brain Champ, Snake 3, and Sudoku. Yes, that's how you pronounce it. So Snake 3, 3D, options, open. There we go. So it has this bad habit of having a white line at the bottom there. New game. We have music. Should be still on max volume. There we go. Max volume. Classic. One player. Very similar to the 6300 and the 6700s as well. This is, yeah, well, this is Snake 3, but the layout is identical. As you see, it works fine. The games work fine. This thing can't really do simple things, but it'll do complicated things just fine. So there we go. Where's the apple? Oh, it's in the corner there. Okay. So as you can see, games work perfectly. I'm pretty sure the other games work as well, but in the interest of time, we'll be not playing everything. That's the cherry. But yeah, as you see, it works perfectly. And the touch also responds really nicely. It's a capacitive touchscreen. Yeah, Snake works fine. So gaming on this thing is perfectly functional, which is weird because a lot of major functions don't work, but the games work. So there you go. But yeah, that's the operating system. Very, very weird indeed. Oh boy, it is now time to discuss the camera specifications and marvel upon the gorgeous images that this camera can take. Well, not exactly, because the camera app doesn't work. Of course, why are you even surprised at this point? So as you can see, the camera on this thing is a 5 megapixel shooter. I'm unsure if it's autofocus, because you'll see in a bit the app doesn't properly work. It's got a single LED flash with the magnifier or amplifier to make the flash look brighter. Front camera doesn't exist, that thing over there is just a sensor. So if you go into the camera app, sometimes it loads, sometimes it really doesn't. Please work. Okay, there you go. So you see some quick settings over there, but after that it kind of goes away. Oh, it crashes like that. Hopefully we can pull it up again. Come on. Okay, it doesn't work now. Okay, so I managed to get it working, and with that internal storage, it quickly appears over there. I don't know if you saw that earlier, 124 images at 5 megapixels. It appears really fast and goes away. There's no way to get it back. And the buttons don't work. There's no shutter button either, so you can't take a photo. Nothing over here works either. And when you press around too much, it just does crash. But as you can see through the viewfinder, it actually looks pretty nice. The colors are nice and all that stuff. Let's bring this Vela prototype over here. It's green, really nice, appears really nice through the viewfinder. So most likely the images on this thing are actually nice. It's just sad we cannot take a photo with this thing. But basing off the Nokia 6700 Classic, that thing also has a 5 megapixel camera with autofocus and a single LED flash, and can record video at 480p at 15 fps, and it has no front camera either. So our best bet is to load up another YouTube video that reviewed the camera on the 6700 Classic, or just Google some images and video samples and look at those, and it's most likely going to be identical to this thing's video and photo samples as well. So again, another feature that doesn't work on this is the application. The camera works fine, the application doesn't work. Kind of a bummer. It would have been nice to see what this thing could do, but then again, the best bet is to look at the 6700 Classic samples and base it off that. That's the closest we can get. It is now time to demo these two stereo speakers, and these things do not disappoint. They're actually really nice and loud. So max volume, we can select some ringtones, and I'll do a separate ringtones video for this phone just for only the ringtones in a future nostalgic ringtones playlist video. So definitely stay tuned for that, for only the ringtones, because there's about 40 ringtones in total. Or there's actually 44 files of tones. So 13 alert tones, 31 ringtones. Let's start off with, of course, the Nokia ringtone. We're at max volume again. So you heard it for yourself. Max volume is extremely loud, so no argument there. Two stereo speakers, very loud, very clear, not tinny. And honestly, they definitely put a lot of effort into this thing's speakers, and they would have probably been one of the main selling factors had this phone gone into production. So really good job on the speakers there. Very loud, very clear, not tinny, really nice. This thing would have made an ideal music phone. Actually, it would have been a good part of the XpressMusic series, as a matter of fact. We are now going to start talking about the extra features on this phone. Now, I mentioned earlier, this thing has Wi-Fi, as you can see there. We can search for Wi-Fi. It also has Bluetooth. And if you see here, it has positioning method. We have Bluetooth GPS. I don't know what that even means, but it also seems to have internal GPS. Could this thing just be a software error or something like that? I cannot say for sure, and I don't know what exactly the GPS technology would be, whether it's actual GPS, a GPS with the assistance, or whatever. Regardless, this thing has a GPS function and maybe has a GPS chip on the inside as well. So based off the 311, actually the 311 does not have GPS, which is interesting. This thing has. It has, the 311 has stereo FM radio with RDS, it has Wi-Fi 802.11 and Bluetooth 2.1 with EDR. But then again, that was from 2012, so maybe this thing doesn't have all that kind of stuff, but maybe just older versions of Wi-Fi plus Bluetooth and all that stuff. The Asha 311 has USB on the go as well. I tried that with this and it didn't really work, so I doubt this thing has USB on the go as well. And it has other things like SNS integration, an organizer, voice memo, predictive text, all that stuff, Java games, document viewers and editors, etc., etc., the usual stuff. So yeah, those were just some of the extra features based off the Asha 311, but it's interesting that this thing has GPS and the Asha 311 doesn't. But again, that could be just an error in the software, considering how weird the software already is. But those are some extra features regardless. Now let us talk about battery and power, and the only way to talk about battery and power on this thing is taking the battery cover off. And another point as to bring forward as to this thing not being a fully fledged complete phone is that you can't take this off with your fingers. This is metal and it'll rip your fingernails off. I tried that and almost did. So you actually have to take it off with a plastic pry tool, and it takes a while, so I'll do that off camera. Alright, so we have the battery cover off, and I can show you this again. You already probably saw this in the B-roll. So we have the hardware ID over there, and again it's over here as well, hardware ID. I've covered up some things. We have Proto over there, the PSN over there, so a barcode over there. Model number is XXYY RM715, Nokia Corporation, B1, property of Nokia, not for sale. Hardware ID again. So here comes the Asha 311 back into the fray here, because it also shares the same battery as this thing, which is the BL4U. Now this thing came with a unsurprising looking BL4U battery. It looks exactly the same, just like any other BL4U battery, and I have to get this charged. It wasn't taking a charge properly, it's probably very flat, but still I had so many BL4U batteries. So just like the Asha 311 uses a BL4U, has identical display size and other things as well, so it's most likely going to have an identical performance in terms of battery. So according to GSM Arena, the 311 has a standby time of 696 hours on 2G and 744 hours on 3G, but I think it's the other way around. It should be more on 2G and less on 3G. Talk time is 14 hours on 2G and 6 hours on 3G, and it has a music playback time of 40 hours non-stop. So very good battery performance, because the Ashas were known for really good battery performance. That was one of their main selling factors. So we can put this thing's cover back on, and as you see, it doesn't really like to go on that easily. It's very tough to get off. So let us power this thing on. And as you see, it powers right on. It doesn't have any power cycle issues or anything like that. So let it power on. Okay, it does that sometimes. There we go. There you go, you saw that. Oh, it skipped the Nokia screen. Weird. Oh, I think I touched the screen, that's why. It if you touch the screen, it skips the hands and the Nokia logo and stuff. So that is that. And as you can see, it is back to working. Sometimes after a fresh power on, there you go, that thing, the swipe works after a fresh power on. But if you have this thing powered on for a while, the swipe doesn't work, and it only swipes to this side, by the way. So it is that. It is like that. Oh, there you go. Oh, it hasn't done that before. There you go. So even more weirdness. It has never swiped to that side. You're seeing this first time on camera. It has never swiped to that. I don't know. At this point, I'm just confused as you. But yeah, I think this covers everything that I can find on this strange phone. Again, this phone is a work in progress. I'm talking to a bunch of people regarding this. More stuff may come up, and definitely we'll be making a video in the future to give this thing a proper name. So we'll definitely do that. Many more videos to come on this thing. Hopefully I can somehow get the camera working. We'll plug this to a computer, dig a bit more deeper. A bunch of videos will come in the future. Of course, the ringtones video is definitely coming. We'll cover all the ringtones with those amazing speakers. So stay tuned for that, most definitely. As usual, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you honestly did, don't forget to smash that like button down below, and also hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification button so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have any questions, and I'm pretty sure you have loads of questions, and you've probably already left them down below by now. So if you have any more questions, leave them down below. I can answer the questions, or we can start a discussion if you have any comments or whatever. My social media is linked down in the description below, which includes Instagram, Discord, and Twitter. Thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next video.